On December 16, 1985, at 5:47 p.m., Paul Castellano got out of his Lincoln outside Sparks Steakhouse on East 46th Street in Manhattan and was gunned down before he reached the door. Two shooters in white trench coats and fur hats fired 6 rounds into him. His underboss, Tommy Bellotti, fell beside him. The killing took roughly 8 seconds. Within the hour, John Gotti had become the head of the Gambino family, the most powerful organized crime boss in the country. But along with that power came a problem he hadn't chosen. The Westies, a violent Irish-American crew out of Hell's Kitchen known for extreme brutality. They'd kill for small sums and dismember bodies without hesitation. Years earlier, Castellano had struck a deal giving the Gambinos 60% of everything the Westies earned. Gotti now controlled that arrangement, along with the unpredictable men behind it. This is the story of that pact, the 60-40 split that funded Manhattan's underworld for a decade, and of a killing that showed even Gotti, for all his power, couldn't fully control Hell's Kitchen. The roots of this went back decades. Hell's Kitchen, the stretch of Manhattan west of 8th Avenue between 34th and 59th Streets, was historically an Irish dockworkers' neighborhood, distinct from the Italian and Jewish enclaves nearby. For years, it was run by Mickey Spillane, a relatively restrained crime boss by underworld standards. He took ransoms and robbed cargo, but avoided drugs and wouldn't touch children. That changed with the rise of Jimmy Coonan, born in 1947, whose father had once been beaten by Spillane's men over a debt. Coonan vowed revenge and spent 15 years working toward taking over the neighborhood. Partnering with Mickey Featherstone, a jumpy, traumatized Vietnam veteran, Coonan spent 1975 to 1978 systematically eliminating Spillane's top men, Tom Devaney, Tom Capetos, Eddie Comiskey among them, through targeted killings. Spillane eventually fled to Queens, but on May 13, 1977, he was shot dead outside his apartment. Notably, that hit was carried out not by Coonan's own men, but by a Gambino soldier named Roy DeMeo, a favor that planted the seed for everything to follow. Coonan realized he lacked the connections, legal, political, and financial, that the Italian families had, and understood he couldn't run Hell's Kitchen alone. So in 1978, Coonan met with Paul Castellano, the Gambino boss known as Big Paul, who lived in a mansion modeled on the White House. The terms were straightforward. The Westies would operate as a Gambino-affiliated satellite crew, taking on violent jobs the Italians preferred to keep at arm's length: contract killings, loan shark enforcement, intimidation on union job sites like the Javits Center project. In return, they'd get Gambino backing and steady work. The catch was the split. 60% of everything the Westies made went to the Gambinos, far higher than the roughly 15 to 20% tribute typical among Italian crews. Castellano justified the steep cut by pointing to how valuable and expendable the Westies' willingness to kill made them. For about 7 years, the deal held. Castellano managed the relationship through intermediaries, never speaking to Coonan directly. Gambino capo Danny Marino served as the go-between, with Roy DeMeo, who ran his own violent Brooklyn crew above him. DeMeo and Coonan had a shared, gruesome specialty: disposing of victims through dismemberment. DeMeo's crew using a meat hook at a Brooklyn lounge, Coonan's crew relying on a bathtub in a 10th Avenue apartment. The two occasionally traded methods and even bodies. Everything shifted with Castellano's murder in December 1985. Gotti had ordered the hit because Castellano was reportedly about to indict several family members over a stolen car ring, and Bellotti was killed to prevent retaliation. But Gotti's background and style were nothing like Castellano's. He'd risen through hijacking crews at JFK Airport, preferred loud, loyal Italian soldiers, and had little patience or trust for an Irish crew that had operated with real independence and a staggering body count. Soon after taking control, Gotti summoned Coonan to a meeting, reportedly at the Ravenite Social Club on Mulberry Street, his Little Italy headquarters. Featherstone came along. Gotti, seated and unmoving, laid out 3 conditions. The 60-40 arrangement would continue under his authority. No Westies killing could happen without Gambino approval going forward. And the practice of dismembering victims had to stop, since it drew too much unwanted press and police attention. Coonan agreed to all of it, then ignored every part of it the moment he left. By this point, Coonan was 38, a family man living quietly in Hazlitt, New Jersey, driving a station wagon and sending his kids to Catholic school, while running an operation believed to have killed somewhere between 30 and 60 people. He operated on a strict personal theory. No body meant no case. So the Westies dismembered virtually every victim, removing teeth and fingertips to prevent identification, then disposing of the remains in landfills or rivers under cover of night. To Coonan, this was simply operational discipline. To Gotti, whose crews left bodies in public as a deliberate show of force, it defeated the entire purpose of a hit. Nobody could be intimidated by a murder no one could prove had happened. Gotti's authority over Coonan was tested for real in 1986. A small-time lounge singer named Vincent Leone, nicknamed Jimmy Sinatra for his Sinatra impression, owed money to both a Gambino loan shark and to Coonan personally, around $20,000 to Coonan, and had reportedly been talking in bars about how the Irish could be avoided or ignored. According to Featherstone's later account to federal investigators, the real motivation was for Coonan to reassert his authority within his own crew and signal that Gotti's new rules changed nothing. Leone was lured to a 10th Avenue apartment under the pretense of arranging repayment. 2 Westies gunmen were waiting. He was shot in the back of the head, then shot again to ensure he was dead. His body was dragged to the bathtub, drained, dismembered, and had the teeth removed before being driven in pieces across the George Washington Bridge for disposal. He was never found. His mother filed a missing persons report, but with no body, witnesses, or clear motive, the police investigation went nowhere. Crucially, Coonan had carried out the hit without clearing it with Gotti, or even informing Marino, barely months after being explicitly warned against exactly that. Gotti reportedly exploded when he found out, summoning Coonan to the Ravenite and berating him for half an hour, warning that any future unsanctioned killing would cost Coonan his own life. Coonan apologized, paid an extra $30,000 in tribute as a peace offering, and went right back to running things exactly as before. The reason Gotti tolerated this came down to money and leverage. The Javits Center construction project alone generated enormous union kickbacks for the Gambinos, enforced by Westies muscle. Cargo theft at the Hudson Piers, bookmaking along 9th and 10th Avenues, and various West Side rackets all depended on Coonan's crew. Cutting them off risked collapsing that entire income stream. Worse, the Westies had nothing comparable to lose, no mansions, no suburban lifestyles to protect, and were arguably the only crew in the city reckless enough to go to war with the Gambinos directly. So Gotti absorbed the insult, kept the arrangement in place, and effectively ceded a degree of control over his own organization for the next 2 years. The collapse began internally in 1987. Mickey Featherstone was convicted in May 1986 for a 1985 murder, that of a man named Michael Holly, that he hadn't actually committed. Coonan had quietly let the blame land on him to settle an old score. Sentenced to 25 years to life, Featherstone eventually learned through his wife that Coonan may have deliberately set him up to remove him permanently. That revelation pushed him to cooperate with the FBI. Over the next 13 months, Featherstone and his wife wore wires, recording conversations with Coonan, other Westies members, and Gambino-linked figures, capturing detailed evidence of the 60-40 arrangement, the Leone murder, at least 7 other killings, plus loan sharking and labor racketeering tied to the Javits Center. On March 10, 1988, federal agents arrested 10 Westies members in coordinated pre-dawn raids across New York and New Jersey, including Coonan, taken from his home in handcuffs in front of his family. The RICO indictment covered 14 counts: murder, extortion, loan sharking, narcotics, and conspiracy, with Coonan's Gambino ties established through wiretaps and Featherstone's testimony. After a 4-month trial and 6 days of jury deliberation, Coonan was convicted on all counts on October 14, 1988, and sentenced to 75 years in federal prison, where he has remained ever since. Gotti himself avoided indictment in the case. The recordings never directly implicated him, and Marino took the fall as the middleman. But the fallout still cost him. The lucrative 60-40 pipeline dried up, and the Javits Center enforcement network fell apart. Within a few years, Gotti would face his own downfall when his underboss, Sammy the Bull Gravano, turned informant against him, much as Featherstone had turned on Coonan. The larger lesson of the Westies affair is that the American Mafia was never as unified as popular depictions suggest. It was really a patchwork of alliances held together by money and mutual fear. Castellano's deal turned a violent Irish crew into a Gambino asset. Gotti inherited that asset without ever managing to fully control it. For all his reputation, tailored suits, and media presence, Gotti couldn't stop a Hell's Kitchen crew from operating on its own terms. Vincent Leone's remains were never recovered, likely scattered across a landfill, a river, or multiple disposal sites. His mother died in 1994, still without answers, and his case technically remains open, though the circumstances of his death are well understood. He was killed in a 10th Avenue apartment so that Jimmy Coonan could make a point, and the fact that Gotti, at the height of his power, couldn't prevent it, says everything about how conditional that power really was. Hell's Kitchen never truly belonged to the Italians or to Gotti. It operated by its own rules until Featherstone's cooperation finally brought the whole arrangement down in federal court. If you want more deep dives into hidden worlds like this, subscribe now and don't miss the next story.